Hey everybody, it's your dad here. I am just letting you know that this is going to be our last episode of the year with Nate and myself. We will, of course, be back next year. Over on Patreon, we have two Hallmark podcasts that are going to be going out. One is going to be about Operation Christmas Drop, and the other one is going to be about our trip to Kansas City to enjoy a Hallmark holiday weekend. So those are going to be up on Patreon, both at the subscription level or if you want to buy them individually. Also, we're going to be going into the new year with some more content, with some more of those Gen X movies that Nate and I have been discussing and talking about. And we're going to be getting back into Deadliest Warrior. I kind of took a break from it to work on a few other podcast projects, but we are only halfway through and we still have not gotten to the Nazi SS versus the Viet Cong. So we have got still plenty of stuff to get to. Plenty of content to talk about, and it's all going to be available over on Patreon, patreon.com/hellofawaytodie. However, if you don't have the money right now, please still sign up. You can get your podcasts through there, through the RSS feed, and also I put out a ton of free content as well. So you're never going to be remiss for at least signing up, and then maybe when you do have a couple of bucks, you can kick them towards us, and we'll give you some great content. So please, everybody, have a great holiday. Please enjoy the content that we're putting out. Nate and I are going to take a little bit of break over Christmas, and then we will be back in January with more great content. Remember, you can get all of your holiday shopping done at whatahellofawaytodad.com. And of course, more Patreon stuff coming at patreon.com/hellofawaytodie.
Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Zoom, zoom, zoom.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Dad. It's your dads. It's December. It is I think this is going to be our last, just you and me, before the end of the year, Nate. I think this is it. We're planning on a bonus episode for January, but it's time to relax. It's time to start taking it slow, mostly because everything is cold and dark and I hate it, and I don't want to be outside. How you doing, Nate?
I'm okay. It's not as cold here. It's definitely dark though. It's, we're getting to the darkest time of the year. We're recording this on the 10th of December, so the sun is setting like 4:30ish p.m. here, maybe a little earlier. So it's pretty dark. It's not as bad as England though.
Yeah, I was gonna say England. I remember it was like 3 something.
Yeah,
when it was
this
dark,
time of
right?
year it starts setting. It's like 3:50 p.m. So it's pretty unpleasant.
Yeah.
I've made the joke before that the United Kingdom is like a country of people who all have seasonal affective disorder, but don't think seasonal affective disorder is real. So I'm glad to not be there. I will say it's been weird. Like it was pretty cold for a while, and now it's kind of unseasonably warm, like probably in the 50s, which is it's still really cold at night, but that's pretty unusually warm for this part of the country, this part of the world, this time of year. So I'm sure man-made climate change has nothing to do with it at all.
And with St. Louis, it kind of goes back and forth because it's 50 degrees today, but it's also very windy. And I mean, today it's 50 degrees at 6:30 in the morning, but that temperature is going to drop. And that's normal for St. Louis. Like when I'm swapping out my cold weather and my warm weather, like pants and shirts and everything, because I store everything that I'm not going to be using, I always keep a pair of shorts in the drawer for that one random 60-degree day in February that we always get. And Midwestern heads will know what I'm talking about.
I don't really have enough space. Actually, I guess I could say I have a big enough closet that I don't have a ton of clothes. So, my summer clothes are in there. There will probably get to a point where we've organized our like basement storage unit enough that I can, transport summer versus winter clothes. But for the time being, like I've managed to make it work. It is a little bit disorganized.
I'll tell you, man, space bags, the big Ziploc bags for your clothes.
We have lots of those.
Fantastic.
We have lots of those. It's just a lot of them we're using them to get rid of, sort old baby clothes to donate, and as well as like any of our old stuff that we don't want to keep, because there's actually, a pretty well regulated clothing donation thing here. So it's not just like getting ripped off or, people taking it to sell on Vinted. It actually does go to charities. And so there's like drop off spots. There's one like maybe 5-minute walk from here. So once we've got a couple bags done up of donation clothes, I take it down there and just been cycling through it. I did get I realized this has happened to me. Maybe it's happened to you before, where stuff has seemed kind of daunting and I'm not sure how to solve a problem. And then when I finally say, fuck it, I'm going to solve this problem, it actually turns out to be a lot easier than I thought. Mm-hmm. So in Geneva, you can get rid of bulky trash household goods as long as it's not electronics or hazardous material by basically going through this process with the sort of waste management department where you pick a slot online and then they send you an email and you have to confirm it within 15 minutes. But then basically I'd been kind of wrangling how to get rid of, there was some old temporary furniture we had bought from the previous tenants. So we'd have something while we were waiting on our stuff to arrive. And then also just some stuff that I realized we just didn't need that had come down, like a big old rug and stuff like that had come down from London. And man, I've had that stuff for the whole time, wondering what to do, how to get rid of it. Like, what do I do? How do I throw it away? Should I like take it apart and throw it away in the dumpster downstairs? Like, what's, and finally I was like, you know what? I got this, once again, being Switzerland, like a very beautifully graphic designed pamphlet about like waste management stuff and like the weeks, what weeks for like when things to be dropped off and all this stuff for like, 2026. And it was like, oh, bulky waste. And I was like, wait, I've never seen this. Went to the website, got it done, booked a slot for early Monday morning, took it out Sunday night. It's gone. Took 5 minutes of browser, and then I had to wait till 8 p.m. on Sunday night and go and get the stuff and take it out, and that was it.
And I don't know, like you lived in New York City. I know every city does waste management a little bit differently, because where I'm at right now, I have alleyways and we have dumpsters in the alleyways, and it's usually like on the dumpsters will be a graphic that has a like, here's what you can throw in here, because we used to have some single stream recycling. We stopped doing that because it was not working out very well, but they have like, here's when the bulk pickup is going to be for the year. Here's when, here. And it's always the first week. It's like the first Monday of the week. But nobody ever reads that. Everybody just hucks shit out at the dumpster whenever. Yep. And just hopes that somebody will come and pick it up. And I'm not complaining, because I do this all the time myself. We refer to them as the dumpster fairies, because sometimes you'll put something out at the dumpster that is just like, this is something that I don't need and I don't want to deal with taking to the donation center, Savers, Goodwill, what have you. But I also don't want to throw it away. So I'm just put it out to the dumpster and somebody will pick it up. And a lot of times this ends up happening. I had to, when I got my hot water heater replaced, and the company was like, it's $100 fee to haul the old hot water heater away. And I said, no, you just take it out and then put it next to the dumpster, and somebody will come and scrap that shit. And sure enough, in like 24 hours, it was gone. So, you just got to know your neighborhood. But I'm curious, in New York, like if you had to get rid of a couch, how do you do that?
Same thing. There's if I remember correctly, there's a schedule. I think it's the first trash pickup, because where I lived in Brooklyn, we had trash pickup 3 times a week, and then we had recycling pickup once a week. So we don't have dumpsters, and I didn't live in a building that had dumpsters or any kind of like a trash room. So you would take basically after 8 p.m. You could, I think it was, it might have been 6 p.m. I can't remember. There was this, you just take trash in black plastic bags and put it out front, like at the, the curb, and they'd come pick it up, overnight. And bulk stuff would typically get put out the first of the month, like the first trash day of the month. In the early days of me spending time there, a buddy of mine was living there. I go visit him. He moved there in like 07, 08. He still lives there. And he used to go, not quite dumpster diving, but like furniture scavenging, because you walk around some of these neighborhoods that are just obscenely wealthy and, in lower Manhattan. And he's like, I found stuff that's in perfectly good condition that would cost me, $1,000 for this office chair or, this dining 100%. Table or something. And I just took it, and then get literally he'd take it in the pre-Uber. He would just try to get it on the subway or like call a cab or if he knew somebody with a car. But like, yeah, he's like, he used to move stuff with like a roller cart and like bungee cords to wrap it up and then just take it on the subway, go to a subway station that has an elevator, because not all of them do. But in New York, I recall when I was moving out, obviously it was a lot more annoying to deal with. I wasn't going to be able to wait until bulk pickup day. So I called a company that handled bulk removal, bulk, disposals. I was going to say bulk removals because I'm so used to dealing with the UK, but yeah, bulk, like waste disposal, household, bulk disposal, that kind of thing. The couch, broken furniture, lots of like that kind of thing. Getting rid of a fridge, because obviously with like CFC or whatever, the fucking refrigerants, you have to like, it has to be disposed of correctly. The one thing I remember in New York was like, for example, if you're throwing away mattresses, they have to be in sealed bags. But like people would often spray paint like bed bugs on it, so people didn't scavenge it, but there were people who still scavenged it regardless. I was gonna say, I said the early days because my friend stopped scavenging furniture. For one, he was doing better in his career and he had enough money, he had his own place, and he got it furnished, and he was more or less done furnishing it, but also he was terrified of getting bed bugs, because in the early 2010s this became a huge thing in New York City. Yeah, you can't scavenge cloth furniture. You can get tables, you can get wood chairs, you can get office furniture, but you can't get like a fiber couch. I would go further than that and say that you don't want to try to scavenge any kind of bedroom furniture even if it's solid wood or metal, unless you have a place that you can treat it just in case, because although bed bugs, obviously, cloth is I've had bed bugs. I got them in New York and I got them treated by a professional exterminator. And I had the strange combination of bed bug bites I didn't feel the bites and I didn't get welts. So I actually didn't know if they'd gone away or not. The only way you could tell is the traces, which is blood on your sheets and, finding bed bugs. But they will find dark places that are small crevices anywhere that they can hang out at to kind of hide until you're asleep, and they can detect, their antenna, whatever, can kind of detect carbon dioxide. And so you breathe deeper when you're sleeping. And so when they it's quiet, there's no light, there's no movement, and they sense more carbon dioxide, they know that you're probably sleeping deeply and they come and bite you. And so when I did have them, they were primarily in the box spring of my mattress, but
you're not getting
which I just got rid of completely. But they also were, for example, in the back crevices of this wooden nightstand that I had. They were one of the telltale signs with bed bugs is if you see little black spots around your power sockets, because they're small enough and thin enough they can fit inside power sockets. And typically there's a power socket close to your bed, and those little black spots are them shitting out your blood. So if there's little black spots around the plastic around the entry points for the tines of power sockets, and you take a cloth with water and you rub it and it smears red, those are bed bugs. That's a sign of bed bugs.
Learning so much about not how I want to live in New York. Apparently I've had to deal with fleas.
Well, anywhere, because bed bugs are everywhere, man. People I remember a friend of mine in Akron, Ohio, talking about this being a problem, because same phenomenon you're describing in St. Louis. People, the dumpster fairies, people coming and scavenging, and it's people scavenge. Well, that couch looks serviceable, or I've got a fucking spray cleaner or whatever, I can make that work. The problem is with upholstered stuff. It's not that bed bugs nest in cloth or they're egg. What it is that stuff that's upholstered, opening it up enough to figure out if there's bed bugs and get rid of them, it's really, really hard. It's typically sewn shut, and they can fit into little crevices. You can't. And so the only kind of thing you can really do to get rid of bed bugs is heat treating. But it doesn't have to be super hot, because they can't handle high heat. But heat treating an upholstered couch requires a thermal tent to seal it off, and a heater that can get it up to 125 degrees Fahrenheit for over an hour to kill them, and also that won't damage the furniture, kind of thing. So yeah, I learned a lot. It sucked, but you can actually get rid of them. You 100% can. The problem is if you live in an apartment complex, if they're there, every unit in the apartment complex has got to get treated. Otherwise, they're just going to go someplace that's not, killing them, and then they'll come back. And if your landlord's a shithead and they don't want to pay for it, and outside of New York, there's, plenty of cities in America that don't have fines for landlords, who don't treat apartments if there's a bed bug infestation. So that's the problem with them. But it's not, there's nothing, people talk about getting them from hotels and shit. And that is possible in the sense of them stowing away and things, because if it's a really bad infestation, they will get into everything. But the biggest thing about it is mattresses, bedroom furniture. If you get stuff secondhand, you really have to know what you're looking for to inspect it. And you got to be willing to basically if you want something that badly, buy a fucking thermal tent and heater unit off Amazon and use it to treat stuff, because I'm telling you, you don't want it. The biggest problem is, as I can see it, the biggest problem is if you live in a place where people have them and it's not been treated, eventually you will get them. It sucks, but
they're not going. Yeah, they're going to move out and move back in, no matter how good your tent. Unless you're going to tent your entire apartment and make it 125 degrees all the time.
You can't. What you have to do is basically take every single thing in your apartment or your home and move it to the center of the room. You have to bag up everything that can be washed and dried in a dryer in trash bags. You have to wash everything on high, dry everything on high. If you've got books, if you've got stuff, if you can heat treat them, great. Otherwise, you have to wipe them down with rubbing alcohol. The problem is the bed bugs' eggs are really small. You won't see them. And what you basically have to leave everything in your home in the center of the room like that, sealed up in bags. And you have to, professionals will spray, and you can buy this pesticide, I think, but professionals will spray the perimeters of every room on the baseboards. And typically what they'll also do is you really can't keep anything under your bed at all. No rugs, no storage, nothing. It's got to be bare stuff. And what you do is you also line the corners of every room with diatomaceous earth, and you put little trays of it as well, like little cup trays, and put those, basically separate where the bedposts of your bed or your bed frame or whatever touch the floor in these little cups, and put it with diatomaceous earth, because that's typically how bed bugs, if they crawl in from elsewhere, are going to come up the feet of the bed and then get onto the bed and bite you, because bed bugs can't heal if they get wounds, and diatomaceous earth will puncture their exoskeleton, and so they'll die. Here's the thing: you kill them, great, but you still have to do this again. You have to leave it like this for at least 2 weeks to extend past the longest possible gestation cycle for their eggs, and basically spray a second time and kill any of the hatchlings that survived, and then basically wait a little longer, probably another 2 weeks, just to make sure they don't come back, and then you can put stuff back together. And it sucks. It's fucking horrible. But what I'm saying is that sounds like torture. That sounds insane. And if you have little kids, pets, etc., I can imagine this would be basically just about impossible without moving. But bed bugs aren't an eternal curse. You can actually get rid of them. It's just, it sucks. And if you live in a big apartment complex and people aren't treating it, like, you're kind of out of luck. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, we had a flea infestation back when my daughter was 2, and it was really bad because the flea infestation started, and we have a 2-year-old, and I looked at my wife and said, yeah, remember how, like, you told me 6 months ago that I should definitely take this trip to Japan with the army? That's going to be for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, that starts tomorrow. And shout out to my wife who, did the research and was like, okay, here's just what we have to do to get rid of the fleas, and systematically washed everything, cleaned everything. Fleas are a little bit easier, I think, to get rid of than bed bugs, because you can see a flea. We know that the fleas were on the dogs, so we treated the dogs. We got everybody the treatments that they needed, flea baths, and then everything, inside cleaned up.
Yeah. You can see bed bugs too, but the problem is that you won't find all of them just by like rooting through stuff.
Right. And fleas are impossible to kill too. Like, you can't just like smash a flea. No. You've got to they got an exoskeleton on them, so they're a little hardier, but I think probably a little easier to kill. But like I said, shout out to Beth for taking care of that, because holy shit, man, it was getting bad before I left.
My buddy who's lived in New York this whole time has, over the course of almost 20 years living there, he's been in apartments where he's had fleas. No, actually, I don't think fleas. Bed bugs, though, for sure. Cockroaches, for sure. Mice, for sure. And so, like, you just kind of learn the stuff you have to do when you're treating for it. With mice, you have to put down traps, and you have to really thoroughly clean everything after you eat. You have to wash all the dishes. You have to dry the sink. Same with cockroaches. With cockroaches, too, like, it kind of depends, because some of them are in hot parts of the US, for example, are kind of endemic, and like you have to do stuff for like basic sanitation to keep them from coming in, but they're just around. Whereas German cockroaches, the little ones, that's an like an invasive species, and those will actually infest in your house. Whereas like the great big ones, the American cockroaches, you can get an infestation of them in your house for sure, but in general, they're just kind of out around.
Yeah, you got to be pretty nasty for them to be in the house. Like, because my house, I know that in my garden, if there's rocks that I flip over, I'm going to see a bunch of cockroaches go scurrying. I've had garden snakes. I've had mice. I know that we live on top of an ant colony, and as long as all of those stay outside, and I have a very nice, I have a compost pile that I know the mice live next to, so that they, can have their food over there. The cockroaches have their rocks outside, and I've only ever seen like one cockroach inside, and it was in an old cat litter box that I just like, oh, we just got to throw this away because this is gross. That's the only time I've ever seen a cockroach in the house, other than that. And I think one time one scurried in accidentally from outside, and then a cat immediately killed it, because I've got 3 cats. So that, keeping my infestations down, I think, is the three hunters that I have that love to eat flies and love to eat cockroaches and whatever else is scurrying around the house. So that helps out.
I've never had a cockroach infestation in a place that I lived. I've stayed with people in Hawaii who had them, but Hawaii's a whole different can of worms, because
that's a whole different
in the tropics. So it's like, if I'm pretty sure it's in the tropics. If not the tropics, it's definitely in the subtropics. And it's also on where my friend lived on the island of Hawaii, they didn't have municipal trash pickup, so you had to take your trash to the dump. And people typically had these great big kind of like collection dumpsters out front, like kind of like a open shed kind of thing, where they'd put their trash in and they'd collect it up in a pickup truck. And you had to wash and dry every dish. Yeah, you really had to be thorough. And even then, like I remember doing the dishes one time and being really thorough, putting everything away. And then the last step was I needed to put the drying mat under the dish rack into the washing machine. And so I could then dry it. And when I lifted it up, there's German cockroaches went everywhere. Like it's really good. I mean, one time that place, man, I fell asleep one night and had not put away food, and a cockroach literally crawled into my mouth. Like I not all the way in, but it woke me up. But like, and it was a big one. So I bought boiled peanuts at a roadside stand, and I take them out of the fridge and was eating them, and I fell asleep on the couch with the peanuts on the couch or like on the coffee table, and one of them crawled on me. Like it's just. Ugh. But I lived in the South. I lived in Georgia when I was in the Army, and I lived in North Carolina, and I'm pretty fastidious about keeping my place clean. I'll admit sometimes I don't always do every dish before going to bed, but I try to like not leave things in a state. And one thing I noticed, because my mom told me about this, because her dad was career Air Force, and they lived in Mississippi and North Carolina and all these places. And then my dad's parents were from Mississippi, born and raised. Basically, after you cook, you do all the dishes, put everything away, and you have to take the trash outside, and you have to like mop the floor, or certainly sweep the floor. My mom's mom would actually mop every night too. And obviously if you like Swiffers, that's a lot easier. But that was before the advent of like some of the more precise pest control stuff we have nowadays. I'd see in really hot weather, we have AC. I'd see American cockroaches in the house every now and again. And I would just spray them and kill them, whatever, get rid of them. Never had an infestation. But I will say, when I lived on-base housing at Fort Benning, it was like privately rented, so you'd get BAH, but it was actually like a old family housing units, and me and two other lieutenants just rented a place because it let us keep $800.
Keep a bunch of BAH.
I would say our BAH was something like $1,100 or $1,200 a a month, and I think our rent was like,
holy shit.
Yeah, BAH is. I mean, that's pretty. Depending on where you're living, it might have been.
I know
it might have been less. I mean, I may be exaggerating it, but it was BAH would have been enough that like if you had gotten that place, it would have probably eaten up all of it. But having roommates, it lets you keep extra money. Yeah. And one night in the summer, like real hot time in summer, like it's above 100 every day. And I was out, I think we were hanging out, it was like a weekend. I was out having a cigarette, and I realized I needed to go grab something from my car, which is parked in the little lot right next to in the sort of back court. I walk over, and it's pre-smartphone. So if I had a flashlight, it must have been an actual flashlight. I don't know, but something about it. I noticed there were cockroaches swarming out of the manhole cover, like swarming. And I was like, that is fucking insane. I've never seen any, like, this is a horror movie, man. But they weren't like swarming to like come inside. They were just, they probably went there in the hottest part of the day, and then they coming out to go.
It's below 90 degrees. Let's go party, guys.
Let's go find some trash. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I never managed to never have mice in anywhere I lived until I was in the UK, and it wasn't until the very end, because the whole odyssey of them fixing the sewer, and they tried to fix it from the outside first, and they couldn't, and they just left this big ass trench basically down to the foundations of our house. And you have to realize with British houses, especially old British houses, the plumbing, typically the pipes for the stack and the black water pipes and the gray water pipes, they flow out of whatever the unit, toilet, sink, bathtub, shower is, and they typically run to the outside of the house. And then the stack pipes on the outside of the house. It's not a particularly cold country, relatively speaking. Like, there's very little danger of your pipes freezing. And so that's just how it's been done forever. These are typically older houses. It's cheap to do it that way. But what that meant was when they dug that, it left like a welcome mat for mice to come in through where the pipes exited the building.
Oh, yeah.
That had been buried, and it hadn't been as like, hadn't been like bricked up, plastered, sealed the way that it normally would be, because it was underground. And they got in, and I started noticing they were in because one day I was grabbing some coffee, and we had it stored on like this like kind of utility table, and I picked it up and a bunch fell out, and it was just, they chewed the back of the plastic to open up to eat coffee beans.
Ooh.
And then I pulled it.
They'll do that.
I had a wooden tool chest underneath this like utility table. I pulled it all back, and there was just mouse shit everywhere. And I was just like, God damn it. Yeah. I've got slugs. I've got mice. I've got random neighbors' cats that just climb in the fucking window. Like,
The UK does sound like every like TV show or every cartoon where you see some like large British woman's like, you gotta get out of here. It just sounds like that's not super exaggerated. It feels like in the UK I will be chased by a large woman with a rolling pin at some point in time. We had mice in our last house, but like that was a 140-year-old house, and you weren't going to do anything about that. Like that, they just lived in that house. Every house, like when a house is built in like the 1880s, there's too many cracks in it. There's too many spots for a mouse to get in.
Our house was like that. It was built in 1891, I think, the one we were living in.
Yeah.
It didn't have a solid foundation. It was basically on like little stilts. It was elevated above the ground.
Oh yeah, ours was on a stone rock foundation.
It was probably a brick course, not because they didn't have pouring cement like that back then. And so we had the house, so ground floor and then first floor. And so I think I told the stories before about slugs getting in when it was wet. And yeah, we had the issue with the mice. One time I was recording an episode of Trash Future and I was sitting in the living room. We had to record kind of late because the guest was an American and he lived in New York. So, he was recording after work, which meant, we had to start at like 10 p.m. and London time. And it was, summer. And I was recording and I stopped in the middle of saying something. I was like, I'm sorry, guys. There's a cat in my house. My neighbor's cat has just climbed in the window and is walking around my house. Give me a second. My friend is like, the guest was like, dude, I have a 3-year-old son and one of his storybooks is about like a cat in London that goes into people's houses. I didn't know that was real. It's like, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
They come in, they got a little knife, they'll fucking stab you in the leg.
No, they were doing the absolute most cat thing possible, which is like, hi, I'm here.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to come to the front door of your house and start yelling at you because you need to open the door and let me out. I was like, so you're just
I know how this works.
You're just coming through my house, so it's a shortcut? Yes. That's what they would do.
You're the backyard it's skipping through right now. We have a couple of strays that come by. They do not try to walk in, but they will stand right outside of our front door. And our front door has 4 windows. It's very mid-century modern kind of. So it's got 4 square windows that goes down the front door. They're all frosted, but the cats will come and just sit in front of that lower window, and you'll see a silhouette of a tuxedo cat or an orange cat. And then our cats will go up and start staring, and you gotta go out and you gotta feed them. I mean, you don't have to, but I do because I got a thing for cats.
The thing with in Britain was that none of these were strays. These were the neighbors' cats, and the neighbors' cats would insist their cats don't go outside, but they do because it gets hot in the summer and the houses get hotter than fuck.
Yeah, you throw if you've got a window open, cats going.
Well, yeah, exactly. And most people, the windows they had were, I mean, it really depends, but you either have your standard kind of like pivots outward window, like opens like a door window. That's pretty common. And then you have sash windows, like ones that are more like what we have in America. But some people's sash windows don't, like the top ones won't open. It depends on how old they are. Mm-hmm. Like the old one, like the top section is fixed and the bottom one is the one that can open. And so if the only way to open your window to get air in the house is to open the bottom one, like you are letting your cat out.
Yep. Especially if you're not going to shove a box fan in there.
Well, yeah, they don't have box fans.
Which you don't have.
They don't have box fans. No one has box fans. Dude, this summer it was so hot and I got my American box fans out with a transformer, and one of the childminders for Naomi was like, where can you buy a fan? That's an incredible. And I was like, ma'am, I really wish I could help you, but it was such a nightmare to get these because no one sells them in Europe. They don't make 230-volt ones. So I had to buy them from America and ship them over and then get a transformer. And it's like, you'd think, but no.
When Joe was living in Armenia, he talked about how people would try to smuggle in iPhones and just cell phones because they're hard to get a hold of in Armenia. I'm just thinking you could have a little side business. You just fly back and forth from, New York with box fans to deliver back to England.
You become like black market Lasco dealer.
Right.
The problem is that fans use direct current motors.
Yeah.
So it's not just a question of the plug. You have to have, and specifically, if you've got a DC appliance, if it's meant for 230 and you put it on 115, like it's not good for it, and it's going to run at low power, but it's going to run.
Yeah.
Whereas the reverse, it will damage it. It can potentially cause a fire. Mm-hmm. I will say, if you put a 115 volt water kettle on 230 volt power, it will boil water faster than fuck, which I learned in Afghanistan. However, be careful that it doesn't melt the wiring.
Yeah, I had that problem plugging a power strip into a 230 and then all of the sparks coming out of all of the holes in it. There was that, and what was the other? What did we plug in? It wasn't a heater, but we plugged something. Oh, my laptop. I plugged a laptop into a 220, and it would, like, the entire chassis was electrified. So I would be typing, and I could feel shocks hitting my wrist coming up through the frame of the laptop.
So with laptops, device and with modern electronics.
And this is 2004, so this is a very old laptop, but
Even back then, though, I mean, I guess I can't really remember because I wasn't in a position. Well, even back then, AC adapters for laptops covered the full range. So 100 volts for Japan all the way up to 240 volts for Indonesia. Mm-hmm. But I bet you I know what happened, which is it wasn't grounded because American plugs for appliances like that are going to be 3-prong, but not, especially depending on where you are. In Japan, for example, I don't think this is where, because Japan's 100 volt, but like in some places when they just have the 2-prong like Euro sockets, the modern versions of those in France and Germany have grounding, but the old fashioned ones in some, like in developing countries, for example, they don't. So you plug it in, it's the right socket, the AC adapter can handle it, but it's not grounded. But that device is designed to be used on grounded power.
Are you suggesting to me that the old Soviet buildings that we were staying in didn't have electricity that was possibly grounded?
They absolutely did not. No, of course they did. I mean, like the grounding wasn't that common in America. I lived in an apartment in Alaska that only had one grounded socket because it legally had to in the bathroom. And the grounding rod for the home was literally right outside the front door, like in like a wire that had been painted over a million times, terminated out onto this like rod jammed into the ground. Like grounding is, whereas in Britain, weirdly, they designed their socket and they kind of made it a standard thing. I think we talked about this before, but I will never cease or desist from talking shit about the United Kingdom. But there are some things they actually do well. And number one, their B2C shipping and like order fulfillment is so much faster than anywhere else I've ever lived in my life. I will grant them that. It's a small country, it's a dense country, but my goodness, sometimes if you order shit in the morning, you might even get it that night and not have done same day delivery. That does not happen in Switzerland. My experiences recently in America does not happen there either.
Boy, even Amazon's taking a week to get anything to you these days. Like I don't know what's going on.
The other thing I'll say is British power sockets are insanely well designed. I mean, they're big, the plugs are big, but they're insanely safe and insanely well designed.
Yeah, you can't, no British child is accidentally sticking a butter knife into a British outlet.
Like, no, you can't because the way that they work, the bottom pin, it's three, it's like a imagine the kind of like the pattern of a triangle where the point of the triangle is the bottom. The bottom pin is the grounding one. It's longer than the earth and neutral, and the earth and neutral sockets have shutters on them and they won't open unless there's something in the grounding pin. Like basically that's like the lever to open it up.
Yeah, the grounding pin is slightly longer than the rest of them.
Yeah. And so even if, I'm not saying give your British child a bunch of butter knives, but they'll just be plugging it into, popping it and basically tapping plastic like a cover on the hot pin, basically.
If your child figures out the dexterity to stick a pin in first and then get it in, that's dangerous, but that shows a lot of good fine motor control there.
Well, also every British power socket, or power plug has a fuse built into it.
Oh, okay.
So it's a standard thing there. Like basically the kind of like, certification for it. In the olden days, they have surge breakers now. I don't know what it was like a long time ago, but what I do know is that immediately post World War II, there was a copper shortage. And so the old method of constructing it would have been to run from each socket, to run wire from the socket to the main, to the whatever the breaker switch box was back in those days. And they didn't have enough copper to do that. So what they did was, in designing the new standards, I don't know if they still do this, but back in those days, they would actually run a ring circuit around the entire room, basically. So one to the next, to the next, to the next. And so if something overloaded, if it had a fuse in there, it would pop, it would burst the fuse, and it would cut the power connection as like a safety mechanism. Now, they don't do that anymore. I know this because like if something blows out, it doesn't turn off every socket in your room.
I was going to say, if it's in a ring like that, it's one is going to bring the whole thing down. But they do still have the fuses in the power plugs. Yeah, and I've noticed that in some American ones, especially older surge protectors, which I think is a great idea because, just having that extra little fail safe. The problem is no American knows what the fuck a fuse is anymore. I know what they are because my last house had fuses. It didn't have breaker boxes. And I've, I'm in my 40s and I've worked with electronics. I know what a fuse is, but you get something, that fuse pops, like, where are you going? You're not going to Radio Shack to get a new fuse. You just...
Well, yeah, I mean, it's weird. Like, I know about fuses, because of plugs and because I've worked with some equipment that uses it.
You know, I was gonna say, Nate, we have a lot of younger people that listen to us, so we've got to explain some of these things.
That's really funny that we'll put it this way. I didn't know this until there's a guy who did a pretty good YouTube video about this, that apparently up until the early 90s, it wasn't standard for appliances in the UK to come with a socket on the power plug. They would come with unterminated wires, and because the expectation was you'd do it yourself, you'd wire up your own.
You mentioned that when you bought, I think, your dryer when you were over there.
I can't remember, but I definitely I think the dryer had one. But what I did know is I bought a old like a dish cabinet from this antique dealer in Nottinghamshire, and it was originally from Denmark, and it has a built-in light, like a display light on the basically on the underside of the top cabinet, and it had an old Danish plug, and they had removed it and left it unterminated. And I could go down to the grocery store and buy a, what is it, BS563, whatever the standard is, socket, and then unscrew it. And then it's really easy. There's terminals for hot, cold, and neutral, or positive, whatever.
Your black wire, your white wire, your green wire.
And
3 wires. And it's what they do.
It's funny because it's if I remember correctly, it's blue is cold, brown is hot, and green is ground.
Yes.
And the joke is, and it's like blue cold. Well, why would be? And it really was just the kind of wiring they had. But the guy made the joke. He was like, "Well, no, it's green is ground, so it's the ground wire. Blue is cold, so it's the one that's cold. And brown is hot because if you touch the hot wire, brown is the color of your pants." And it's like, all right, well, I'll remember that from now on.
Yeah, American Standard jumps back and forth between green for ground and white for neutral, and then red or black for hot. Either way.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different. There's an old-fashioned one here, and then there's a newer standard. But like there's striped wires. I have Googled it numerous times when installing light fixtures in this apartment, and just found that
yes, the striped wires, I've come across.
And to be honest with you, what I wound up doing, because it's different depending on how old of an installation it is, or for example, if someone has basically linked it and added an extension to it to install these, overhead light fixtures, I just have a multimeter, and I literally just go up on the ladder, and use my multimeter and check with the power on and see which one is running hot, and then mark it with some tape or something. And
that's 100%. If you ever are going to do electrical work, get a multimeter. They're cheap. They're $5 tops. You just touch it to the wire and it beeps if it's hot, and it doesn't beep if it's cold.
And it also it depends. Or you can, if you get a slightly more expensive one, they definitely don't need like the super mega high end ones if you're only doing this kind of basic household stuff. But getting one with a resistance meter is helpful too, because that resistance meter will tell you basically by virtue of how it works whether or not there's like a clean connection, like a connection between things. So like if you're checking something, you're trying to fix something, or you're trying to see, does this wire run to this thing? You can clip onto one and then tap the other. And if it beeps because it's measuring resistance, it's reading, it's getting signal through it, getting current through it. It'll tell you. And it's also helpful too, because I use that for multimeter for fixing microphone cables, or I did when I lived in London, because then I can tell if the terminal pins on the actual like head shell on the connector, like, is the connection good between that and where the wire terminates? Is that good between the ends of the cable? You know what I mean? Like on the other, like if you're doing this for mega pro stuff, you have a cable tester. But if you're just doing it for like a project, like little things like that, and then like Francis said, if you just need it for checking, like, is there a current running through something, then get a cheap one that it works. So
I've got one. One of these days I'm going to go through and like catalog all the tools that I have. And because I have so many things that I've picked up for like one or two, like I'm going to use this like maybe once, but in 10 years I might use it again. Like I've got a post hole pounder that I've only ever needed once installing my fence, but like it was $80 and it's a post hole pounder, and Lord knows I might need to pound some more posts. But I also like being that guy that's got every tool that can let somebody borrow something, so that works out.
I mean, I need to do some DIY stuff. I have a bunch of like life maintenance tasks and work tasks that have to get done before the end of the year, but one of the things I've been meaning to do is I built this kitchen cabinet when we moved in, and I need to stain it, because what I've discovered from living here for over a year now, this is a very nicely insulated apartment. The heating works, and while it doesn't have radiant underfloor heating, the floor is actually warm in the spots where the hot water pipes are traveling under the floor. Okay. So it's warm. It's very nice.
Nice, yeah.
It's not like, I'm not going to say I'm like flawlessly comfortable walking around barefoot, but I could walk around barefoot in winter and not feel cold. Whereas in Britain, that would never happen, ever. However, I realized that you really have to be cognizant of any unstained or untreated or even just old and worn out wood that's like joined boards or glued boards, because when it's that dry for that long in winter, it will crack. And the shelf system that I built literally was just, I bought a couple of planks of wood of the right, they were meant to be like cabinet wood. And so like they were the almost 1 inch in metric thickness, or a little more than an inch in like it's 25 millimeter thickness. And they were like, I can't remember, I think it was 80 centimeters depth, because that's like your standard cabinet fit. And it was really easy. It was like 20 francs to buy this board, or however, I think I bought 2 of them. And then I just took measurements and cut the second one to make 2 higher shelves. And because we had a what's the right word here? Portable freezer, basically like an external freezer that we bought, because the built-in one in our fridge is really tiny. And it was actually something the previous tenants had, and we bought it off them when we moved in. And I wanted to be in that space where it was the right space, right place for the freezer, but there, was a lot of wasted space above it where it's like, well, we could use some more cabinets in here. So what I did was I got these planks, I got scaffolding pipes with like the pipe clamp connectors, the pipes themselves, and then like I basically bought them off a service where you could literally give millimeter measurements and it was laser cut, so like they were completely precise. And nice. I mean, they're heavy duty as fucking. They're like, I'm not into like industrial aesthetic, but it works for what this is. And what I basically did was I wound up with 3 tiers of shelving, and it's like 4 legs and feet on the very bottom row, and then 2 legs on either side. Well, basically 1 leg on either side, so 2 to support the next tier and the next tier. And then I put corner brackets, like 90-degree corner brackets, and bolted like into the wall on both shelves above. So it's stable. It's got the kind of like layer cake kind of connectors between it as like a shelf system, but then you don't have those wasted space of like the feet in front of it, like, having 4 feet for every shelf. But to make that a little more stable and not like wobbly, I did like bracket it into the wall. So it's really cool. And it worked great. I used it to, our coffee maker and our microwave and our bread box. And then I used it to store like the food processor and the air fryer and slow cooker, and then like some pots and pans and the mixing blender, immersion blender and stuff. So it's awesome. I'm really, honestly, I was so happy, because in the past, dude, I was always like, I'm going to fucking do this. Oh, I don't have the right tool. I'm still going to do this. And then you make a complete mess of it and it's a disaster. And this was last year, but when I was doing this, I thought about it a lot. And then I was like, you know what? I think I've got a plan here. I need to get a circular saw. I need to get a circular saw that can mount to a track. I need to get clamps. I need to actually do this the right way. And I had to think about it for a long time. But then when I actually did it and set up and I made the cut, it took me like 20 seconds to make the cut, and it was perfect. It was completely fine. The only thing I did wrong was I didn't have anything to hold the board after. So a little bit chipped off at the end when it kind of fell, but it was fine. So in a way, this was like, oh, I've done my job. I have actually been responsible for once. I solved the problem without over designing it. It works. I actually solved the problem of the metal pads on the tile floor, or the metal feet, like scratching and sliding a bit by getting, I thought about it for a while, and I found replacement rubber discs that would normally go to a pneumatic jack for like jacking up a car, but they were like 5 francs each for these discs, and they were like maybe 1 or 2 millimeters wider than the diameter of the feet. And it's perfect. They don't move now. It's great. But unfortunately, it is entirely possible that if I do not actually get around to unmounting this thing and staining all the boards, that the boards are going to split, because they're, spruce, I think. And they're just like, they're
very brittle.
Yeah, it's brittle, and they're glued. I didn't glue them. They came basically, but like it came at this, length and width, but they are obviously like mated spruce boards that then were cut with cut and planed. And so, I have to actually do that. So I actually have to go into staining wood as a matter of necessity, instead of just like, having fun doing a DIY project.
Oh, I'll tell you, let me tell you my shelf project, and then we're gonna get on out of here. Downstairs, my workbench that I do all of my artistic creations and whatnot at is basically a door on a couple of sawhorses, and I needed a shelving because so much stuff was on the workbench that I work with: paintbrushes, X-Acto blades, all that stuff. And also, I'm just not a very organized person, and I will admit to that. But what I did is I needed a shelf solution above the workbench, but the workbench is up against a wall. And if you've ever, been working in a basement, especially one that's unfinished, you cannot hang anything on the foundation. It's like impossible to drill into, to hang anything on. It's very specific concrete. It's not like, upstairs where I have plaster or I have brick or I have drywall that's easy to go through. So, but all my rafters are wood. So I got like a couple of 2x4 2x4s, and I just drilled 2x4s into the rafters, and then got a couple of 10x8s, I think, or 8x8s, 8x1. I don't know. I got shelves. I basically got what you would use. You go and buy it at Lowe's for $10 because it's a cheap platform that you can do, and everything is just hanging from the rafters now, and which is something I should have figured out, because when we moved in, there was so much stuff hanging in the rafters as well. You jam a big nail into it, and then you can hang something on it, and that way it's not on the floor or on a shelf or something.
Yeah.
So, and it's very because it's a basement and because it's where I'm doing some kind of work, I'm not painting it, I'm not staining it. I use it for notes. Like sometimes I'll just be up there taking notes, like measurement notes on it. So I'm slowly turning this into like, one day my daughter is going to go downstairs. She's like, this is Dad's workshop where he did all of his stuff, and you can see all the years that he's put into it, because he's incredibly messy and he never cleans up after himself. So you can see what Dad has been doing down here.
I record in the mess room because we kind of like an overflow room, but I would say in this apartment we've actually managed to achieve a lack of clutter that I'm genuinely both pleased and impressed by, because when we lived in New York, we just didn't have enough space. And in London, there were no closets. There was no obvious storage other than like getting shelves and installing shelves. And even then, that's still like a lot of open shelving. But this place has a number of built-in closets. So and they're big. They're like double door built-in closets, like not quite floor to ceiling, but almost. And that's really, really nice, because we have our hall closet for coats and shoes and hats and stuff and shopping bags. We have hall closet for, household things like mop and bucket and, all the baby stuff and tissues and toilet paper and that kind of thing. Cynthia's got one for her clothes. I've got one for my clothes. And then we've got one in the bedroom that's got a lot of like toiletries and is also in a lot of ways kind of overflow, because I'm going to get rid of some stuff that's in there. And so my goal, basically what I just described, get that thing successfully stained in a way that doesn't require me to leave it unmounted at night when my daughter comes home, because I do not want to have the kitchen out of commission, and also that doesn't leave the smell of wood stain in there if I can avoid it. I have to put up some shelves, get rid of some stuff, and then honestly, I need to just, next year, I should hopefully be able to get a studio space of my own, and I can migrate a lot of the stuff that's here that, I would be using in a studio, but that I'm not going to use at home. I recently had to do a thing for this recording project that I did in the UK, where we had a potential additional recording, and I had to just record some tracks at home. And I learned a ton on this about actually how you record professionally when you're recording music. And I've got stuff that can give pretty close to the same result, in terms of like the sound that we were getting in that studio with their preamps. For the heads out there, the studio had a ton of preamps, but it had Neve 1073s. Now, I'm not going to buy Neve 1073s, but JHS Pedals makes this thing called the Color Box version 2. It's literally just a 9-volt guitar pedal, but they've recreated the transformers of Neve 1073, and it's got EQ as well, and it sounds insane. I mean, it's not cheap. It's like $350 for each one, and if you're going to record stereo, you need 2. But like a Neve 1073 preamp is going to be like $2,000 minimum for one. So it's amazing. However, I bring this up because to go through and record, I have to move everything off the kitchen table when no one's here, set up a power strip, set up my computer, set up my interface, set up my DI boxes, set up these pedals and the power supply for the pedals, set up the instrument, set up the MIDI rig, the interface so that they can talk to it, run the cables into it, run the cables into the pedals, run the cables in the through so we can get a clean signal recording as well. And it's like, that's like an hour of setup and about 30 minutes of putting stuff away afterwards. There's just simply no way I can do this at home. I've got to get a studio space. So since this is probably our last Just Us recording, this is my message to you. I have actually made some progress this year with some things despite a lot of curveballs, and I will hopefully be able to report not too long from now that we are peasy clean of sorts. The Army expression for when everything's off the pickup zone and you haven't left anything behind. Peasy clean on fucking DIY projects that have needed to be done since we moved in, but that like time management hasn't allowed. So I expect, or at least I hope, Francis, that you will hold me to this, that you're like, hey, Nate, how are you doing on those DIY projects? And I'll be like, well, gee, Francis, it's funny that you should mention that because I have actually installed these shelves or finished hanging up pictures or gotten rid of some bullshit. But I'll say it's looking good. This will hopefully not be the mess room by the time that you and I are doing our last Just Us recording of 2026.
Yeah, we'll hold each other to it. During Christmas break, I'm going to be cleaning up my basements. A lot of stuff that's got to go out, a lot of stuff that can be sold, but really need to make a lot of space. So Christmas, hopefully we're both gonna start the new year getting our workspaces right. But everybody, thank you so much for listening. As I said, it's probably going to be our last, me and Nate, before the end of the year. But we have lots more stuff that's coming out this year. December, we've got two bonus episodes. We have one bonus episode that is already out, one that Nate recorded about music. Kind of give the kids a kind of rundown on that episode.
Oh, so my friend Sam and I have very different backgrounds, but very similar music taste to some degree. And we realized this one time when I was helping her move some stuff into her apartment. And so we started doing a show where we talk about music and how we've connected to it. And basically one person picks a song they like, and then the other person's responsibility is to find a song that, is from any number of decades removed. And we call it twinning because basically it's like, if I pick a song from 2006, Sam has to pick a song from 2016 or 1996 or 1986 or 1976, but we have to find something that's been somewhat removed. And then basically we talk about it and the other person talks about their song and we react to it. And then we also link the songs in the show notes so you can listen as well. So it's just really fun. We both love talking about music. We both love music. So I make music now. So, it's a lot of fun. And then my other music project, well, that's once it's actually done and released, I will absolutely plug the living daylights out of it on the show. But I think the earliest that's going to come out is probably March because we have to go back to mix the album in February and then get it mastered and then do all the stuff you do for labeling and, art and credits and
all the bullshit stuff that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
All the non-creative
Yeah, there'll
stuff.
be a little additional recording being done in February when we mix, but primarily it's just making everything sound good and then getting it mastered. And then after that, it's like wrapping a gift, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, but it was cool, man. It was a really cool experience. We'll talk about it sometime in more detail. It was insane. I had a blast. I love making music, and actually being in a professional recording studio was a really, really cool experience. I understood the process, but I'd never done it at that level in a place that was specifically dedicated to it. And so, yeah, it was awesome.
Well, once that's out, I'm sure we'll dedicate a whole episode to it, talking about the process, and maybe we'll bring your co-writer, your
my bandmate,
musician,
yes,
yeah, your bandmate. We'll bring them on too, and kind of go over it. So, everybody, thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Have a good one.
Zoom, zoom, zoom.